What's up, you guys? This is Noor, and this video is the second part following up to my previous video talking about the werebeasts and the affinities of the Ibibio tribe. And in this video, we're going to be reading three different passages or three different stories that pertain to three different concepts within the Otherkin and Therian community. The first passage is going to pertain to the sympathetic relationship of a human and their affinity. The second one is going to refer to being possessed by an animal spirit, and the third is going to refer to sending one spirit out into an animal form. Now, if you don't know what book we're going to be reading these passages from, we're going to be reading it from Life in Southern Nigeria, The Magic, Beliefs, and Customs of the Ibibio Tribe by P. Omri Talbot. Now, let's start with the first passage. Not long ago, a man of Asun Inyan town asserted that his wife, Esiet Idung by name, had told him that her soul sometimes left her and went to dwell in the body of a fish in the Kwa Ibo River. One day she came to her husband crying, I am caught, and must die. For a fisherman has snared my soul in his trap by the waterside. Go therefore to the place of which I shall tell you, and release me before it is too late. For should the man come and kill my affinity, I must die also. On this, in all haste, the husband took a canoe and went with his friends to the trap which his wife had described. They opened the door and let all the fish swim out into the river. Among the others, they noticed one of great size, which plunged eagerly out into the current. On their return, they found that the woman had recovered, but all believed that had the fish been killed, she must have perished also. Now, if you don't know what sympathetic magic is the strong relationship between a person and an object or an animal, be it an affinity or a familiar or any other thing. And the relationship is said to be so strong that whatever happens to this object or this affinity or this familiar or this animal, it affects the person's health, it affects the person's mental state, it affects their well-being overall. And I think some basic examples of sympathetic magic would be a voodoo doll. If you were to poke a voodoo doll in the arm and you feel pain in your arm, that's a form of sympathetic magic, because the relationship is supposed to be so strong between you and this doll that whatever happens to the doll, the damage is also incurred upon you. So firmly is this belief in fish affinities held among Eket women that when other Ibibio have had a specially good catch and carry fine specimens of smoked fish to market, the former are known to burst into bitter tears at the sight, weeping and wailing, "You have slain our kin." Now, we're going to be moving on to the second story, or the second passage. Another Eket woman of Osun Inyan, the sister of the fish soul above described, believes that the spirit of a wild boar occasionally enters into her body. At such times, she becomes so possessed by the affinity that it is said to be impossible to hold her. Superhuman strength seems to flow into her, and she is reported to bound from the ground as though she would spring to the very roof. The only way of quieting her is to send for a man of the same town known to belong to the wild boar totem. He has but to enter the house and lay his hand, though never so lightly, upon the afflicted woman, and she at once quiets down and returns to her normal state. Now, we see something akin to berserkers of Norse mythology and this sudden burst of strength and this ferocity that occurs within them. And we also see in another story that there's another woman that's also possessed by another type of boar spirit, and she behaves very similarly to this boar spirit. Just as the Nada Edi themselves are said to exist only in the portion of about 1 to 1,000, so their human affinities are rare in the extreme. Only one case of such was brought to my notice. A woman of Idua Oron, who claimed to be of the kind boar totem, and in consequence at periods of the year refused to set foot on the ground, lest her soul should be soiled thereby. At such times, when she sallies forth, the people run before her, spreading mats from which they are careful to wipe every speck of sand. Even when passing, so carefully prepared away, should her eye fall upon mud or any foul thing, she would check her steps, and drawing back her foot, stand hesitating in the manner of a cat that will not wet its feet, until the offending sight had been covered or removed. Down to the waterside she passed, then dived a bit, and came out again, restored to her usual state, but lifting feet and hands very daintily. Now, if you need some clarification on that, I skipped a very important passage in the middle of these two women's spiritual possessions. Among this group of people, There are two kinds of wild boar souls known to exist. The first is the common sort called Eket, of which affinity the first woman may be cited as typical. Old hunters tell with bated breath of another, the Nada Edi, which they fear to shoot lest they should be killed by the herd. Among every 1,000 or so of bush pig, they say one is to be found of great size and very splendid, with a skin marked like that of a leopard. When Chief Henshaw was a boy, he declares that one was killed on his father's plantation, and that he himself saw it with these very eyes. Such animals, so hunters state, are the kings of the bush pig. They are never allowed to walk at all, but are carried everywhere by those of the common sort. On the rare occasions when such have been shot, their feet were found to be white and tender, which proves that this statement is true. Never do they seek for their own chop. This is brought by the lesser pigs at dawn and evening to a place made ready in the depths of the bush, where fresh leaves have been strewn up and down for the bed. Each year the king boar is carried away to a new place amid very thick bush so that hunters should never find him. No least spot of mud must be allowed to touch him at any time, for these rare and mighty beasts cannot abide any foul thing. And this we see in the behavior of the second woman being possessed by this second kind of boar spirit. Now we're going to be moving on to the third and final passage that pertains to sending your spirit out into animal form, or I believe another form of bilocation shifting. In the same town there lives a juju man of most evil reputation, who is credited with the power of sending out his soul into a crocodile, and in this shape to be in the habit of lying on the little beach just below the rest house when government officials of any importance are staying there. He is said to do this in order to listen in case report of his ill deeds is brought to their ears. So should such a thing happen, he goes into hiding until the matter has blown over, and is stated to have thus often evaded punishment. Should anything happen to cause him more than ordinary annoyance, he is thought to avenge himself in a terrible way. Some 8 years ago, he was incensed against government, and especially against the political agent, on account of restraints placed in the way of his evil deeds. As a result, so it is said, he lay in wait in crocodile form upon the little beach until one of Chief Hensaw's boys went down to bathe. At once the cruel jaws opened, and to the horror of his companions, the unfortunate lad was dragged beneath the surface. So we see in several different stories within the same geographic area and group of people, 3 different concepts that occur in modern day within the otherkin and Therian community. And this has occurred decades, if not potentially a century or two before. And I think this is an interesting thing to consider, that in other societies, the concepts of being possessed by an animal spirit, or sending your spirit into an animal body, or sharing a sympathetic relationship with another creature or affinity or familiar, was a relatively common thing. Now, I'm going to probably follow this up with a part 3, because this chapter is not over yet, and there is possibly many more interesting stories in this chapter. What did you think about these 3 stories? Which one was your favorite? This is Makanor. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Bye.